Steelers beat reporter Nick Farbaugh. I'm John Luciew, and we are live on YouTube. So get your questions for Nick in the chat, and we're going to field as many as we possibly can. This is a big week 2 podcast coming off a huge win in week 1 that has pretty much re-energized the 412 area code. The headlines: Aaron Rodgers still has it. Broderick Jones may never have it. Deshaun Elliott is ailing, so we add Jabril Peppers to spice up the defense. And there are some wild rumors circulating about a dream trade that would bring in Tyreek Hill as a target for A-Rod. We're going to get Nick's takes on all that in a minute. And, of course, he'll be breaking down the big home opener at Acrisure against Seattle this coming Sunday. But, Nick, as you digest the game in New York and review the tape and listen to Tomlin at today's press conference, what are your big takeaways about what this team is right now, what its problems still are, and where this team could be headed throughout the trajectory of this 2025 season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you watch them, to me, this was a crazy upside-down game. Like, we didn't expect that, did you? We talked about this on this podcast, and I was like, I think it's going to be like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, like run battle. Who's going to stop the run the best? It's probably going to be an ugly passing affair that, these guys combined are probably going to look pretty ugly, and neither thing happened. Fields looked very good. They ran the ball at will against the Steelers. On the other side, the Steelers didn't run the ball well at all, and didn't matter. Rodgers diced them up, man. I mean, it was crazy. Rodgers historically is not a good quarterback in week 1, and this was one of his best week 1 performances, not just recently, but of his entire career.
Wow.
It just crazy game. 34-32. I never saw that coming.
No.
The Steelers did basically everything I thought they wouldn't do. They didn't stop the run. They looked way better, honestly, against the pass. When you look at the film, actually, their pass defense wasn't bad. It was Justin Fields getting loose and creating stuff after he broke contain. And the offense looked explosive. It kept up with the Jets' offense that didn't punt in the first half, and the Steelers responded basically by scoring on every one of their possessions in the first half, all but one. So, yeah, what a crazy game. I did not see it playing out that way, John, but I mean, good for the Steelers to win this type of football game. I didn't see it coming, but hey, if you win them how you can.
Right, and good for Steelers fans because we now have an entertaining team. For too long, that offense has been so constipated that it has needed an enema. And finally, we get a team that's exciting and fun to watch. It's not like watching paint dry. And speaking of Rodgers, what makes it even more surprising is not only, the down couple of years he had with the Jets, he and DK Metcalf didn't play a snap of preseason ball, and to come out that sharp, what does it say about the trajectory from here and the chemistry that's developing between Rodgers and the offensive coordinator?
This looked great. Rodgers, typically, John, not a guy that likes to go under center and have all that kind of play action stuff with his back to the defense. It's not been something he's historically done. I don't know if you saw this stat, John, but this is pretty crazy. There were 10 attempts by Rodgers for play action. He was sacked on 2 of them, so he had 8 passes, really. He had 10 dropbacks. He went 6 of 8 for 75 yards, 3 touchdowns on those plays. That is the first time Aaron Rodgers has had 3 or more touchdowns in play action. Get ready for this. Since 2016. 2016. He broke kind of the code of what a usual Aaron Rodgers offense looks like. This looked more Arthur Smith than Aaron Rodgers. And we had kind of talked about, where do you have to compromise? Well, it certainly looks like Aaron Rodgers was the one that did a lot of compromising if you go by the week 1 game plan. The other thing that was a little crazy, the slant route is back in the Steelers offense. That is something that we have not seen a lot of in Steelers offenses over the last few seasons. Last year, they had 7 slant routes all last year targeted. In week 1, 4 of them were targeted. That's a Aaron Rodgers staple. So that you see like both sides of the coin, right? There's Rodgers' influence, there's Smith's influence, and it worked beautifully. And this offense was very odd this week because they didn't really push the ball down the field very often. Sans a few times to Calvin Austin and a free play where Rodgers overthrew Metcalf. But that was more of a savvy play to get them caught in illegal substitution. I kind of tweeted this out yesterday, John. Just some stats that caught my eye about this team. Play action on 33% of their dropbacks. It's the highest the Steelers have had in a decade. 2014 was the last time they had that high of play action usage in an offensive game plan. Crazy. Rodgers had 99 total air yards intended. So he didn't even intend passes to go deep much. Less than 100 yards is crazy. So he had 4.4 yards per play. That's crazy. 2.2 time to throw. 2.29 seconds. Fastest in the NFL. Rodgers was getting it out quick. 8 screens. 8 screens. That's a ton of screens. By far the most in the NFL. This game plan was actually insane by Arthur Smith to just kind of rapture the man blitzes that Aaron Glenn and the Jets utilize, and he got them. And you saw the yak, Metcalf alone, 68 yards after the catch. Calvin Austin, 34 yards after the catch. Skoranek even had 17 on the touchdown. So this was a game plan that didn't have Aaron Rodgers, throwing the ball down the field. We saw that in training camp, and it's absolutely part of the game plan that I think will be in there. But what we saw was a team that brutalized the Jets secondary. They brutalized the blitz plan that the Jets brought out. And despite having their own issues, their quarterback put the team on his back a little bit. And so did not see this playing out that way. But kudos to Aaron Rodgers, kudos to Arthur Smith, and kudos to these wide receivers who I think really actually helped a lot with their yak ability in this one.
Right. And for all the talk about a wide receiver too this offseason, maybe the answer was inside the building all the time in the form of Calvin Austin III. A guy we really didn't hear much of was Roman Wilson, right? And any idea of about these wild rumors about Tyreek Hill trade?
Listen, I haven't heard anything about Tyreek Hill. On top of the trade rumors that dropped today, if you've seen in the news, he seems like going to be embroiled in legal issues here quite soon. So there's going to be a lot of things there that you would have to take on with Tyreek Hill. Absolutely has been a locker room malcontent multiple times over his career. I mean, literally to end the year last year, said, "I'm out, bro," to the Dolphins, and then rescinded that and expected to walk back in a locker room with open arms, and that obviously didn't happen. So that relationship is frayed. So sure, I could definitely see him being traded. I understand the talent, but if I'm the Steelers and a guy like Romeo Doubs is available instead, I'm going after that guy. For Roman Wilson, the kind of fun part of his game plan this week was, he just kind of did it for the love of the game in some ways, John. And that's kind of how I would describe it, is a lot of decoy routes, a lot of ones where they just said, "Hey, Roman, just fly off the ball, run as far as you can, and just clear out this part of the field for someone else." And you saw it a few times where he just cleared out the underneath. For Calvin Austin on one of his big catches, he just ran a route deep, cleared it out, wide open, 31 yards. We saw him do it for DK Metcalf a few times. And a lot of it outside of that was just stick your nose in the fan and block. And 10 snaps for Roman. But I thought what he did was good. I thought what we saw out there from him was good. So I thought there were a lot of good things from Roman Wilson when you watched him out there. But I will also say that I think he's going to be more involved in future game plans. So this was just one of those games where they said, okay, we're going to go with other guys this week. Roman Wilson is not going to be a decoy all year, John. He will be somebody that they end up utilizing at different points.
Great analysis there, and maybe a preview of coming attractions from Roman Wilson. Do not give up on him yet. Do we give up on Broderick Jones? How bad was it with him?
Yeah, it's about as bad as it looked live. Listen, some of these things. Here's the thing: some of these things that you saw from him were not all his fault. Aaron Rodgers does not have quick twitch explosion anymore to get in and out of the pocket, and he ran into 2 sacks. Jones got beat pretty badly on both plays, so kind of half and half on both of them. Rodgers isn't going to move as much anymore. Here's a big stat for you, John. Pressure to sack ratio is a good stat for me because how many times you're pressured versus how many times they turn to sack. That's a quarterback stat. Rodgers was pressured not that many times, but he was sacked 44.4% of the times he was pressured, and those were turned into sacks. That's a high margin. And it really kind of fits the model of what Rodgers was last year as well. So there's something there. But Broderick struggled badly. He dropped his head and would get beat by power. Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams were over him. Quinnen Williams is a guy that's inside more than he's outside, but the Jets did that to kind of match up punt. They moved McDonald around and just put him on Broderick and said, all right, we think he's the weakest link. And clearly, he allowed 3 sacks, allowed 4 pressures. That's not good. This is a guy that, I think in order to be playable, has to be someone that kind of is a net positive in the run game. And he wasn't that either. Most of the guys in the run game were kind of up and down, but Broderick didn't do much at all in those respects. His hand usage is wide. I do like his footwork still, but all the shots we told like that he made in the preseason, he reverted back to a lot of them. Hand usage, dropping his head, high pad level, letting guys get into his chest and rocking him back. He did not play well. And Broderick is not the only one on this offensive line that didn't play well. I don't think Isaac Seumalo played very well. I thought it was one of the worst games of Zach Frazier's career. Like we've expected very, very high level play from Zach Frazier. He was okay. I think Mason McCormick was probably their best offensive lineman. I thought he looked improved from a year ago, but again, still up and down. And Fautanu was great in pass pro, but didn't really bring it on the ground game. So, all these O linemen kind of had up and down game. Broderick is certainly the worst of them, but he is not the only one. So, while Broderick certainly struggled, and I think you kind of have to think about if you're going to drop back in heavy pass pro situations where you're asking him to hold guys for 3 seconds, for example, on those play action deep shots. I do think there's other guys on this offensive line that need to play better too. But yeah, not a good game for Broderick, man, and it's definitely worrisome if you're Pittsburgh to see him just get worked. Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams are great players, but to get thoroughly dominated like he did, I mean, he's going to face Myles Garrett at some point, and how that's going to go if he plays like that.
Right, and the troublesome. I think you really laid a finger on the fact that okay, some guys were better in the passing game than the running games, but we need to get both of those games going, and the running game and the pecking order of the backs and the number of snaps. I mean, what's your analysis of getting this running game to where they want those explosives? They don't want just volume. They want big gains when we hand the ball off. What's the solution to that?
It's crazy because I don't think it's schematic. They ran gap, they ran zone, none of it worked. Now listen, here's the thing. I do think some of it was the Jets front. I think the Jets have a very underrated defensive line. Will McDonald, Quinnen Williams, Harrison Phillips, Jawan Briggs, Jermaine Johnson, like good players across that offensive line. And Quinnen Williams kind of wrecked the run game all by himself. He was everywhere on tape. They tried to get him on trap. They tried to get him on crunch. He didn't. They tried to use his aggressiveness against him. He was too cerebral for that. They tried to run outside of him. He still somehow ranged over. Like he was a menace in that regard. But I do think the key to this run game is still like syncing up back to O line. The O line has to be better. I do think, the scheme itself is always going to have a hard ceiling. I don't think the scheme is great. If you don't have Derrick Henry running the football, I think naturally there's going to be limitations to this run game. But more importantly, I just don't love the way they deployed their backs. I don't. Kenny Gainwell, I think, is a nice player that certainly deserves playing time. But 29 snaps compared to Warren's 25 and KJ's 2.
Hmm.
Caleb Johnson with 2 snaps? Like, I think Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren both deserve more snaps than that. Like, you do not need to use Kenny Gainwell in every passing situation. Uh, Jalen Warren's a very good pass protecting and pass catching back. He had that role for years. And you concur. And I think on the other flip side of that, you don't always need to use Jalen Warren as an early down back. I think it's okay to use Kenny Gainwell's pass catching ability early in downs just as much as it is okay to use Caleb Johnson's running ability earlier in downs. So there's a lot of things to me that kind of are questionable with how they divvied that up. Um, and Warren kind of had this Najee Harris stat line that you saw. 25 snaps when he was on the field. He touched it on 13 of them and was not an efficient day for him. So,
Hmm.
wasn't an efficient day for anybody on the ground. The ground game was not good. And so they need to get that figured out because Rodgers, as good as he was on Sunday, I do think, you can't expect him to always carry you. And I think that's something that you have to think about. So this ground game getting kind of going is going to be something that's going to be really important for the Steelers over the next few weeks.
I couldn't agree more. And the 2 snaps for KJ the rookie, is there a message there somewhere, because he did have a fumble on special teams, and we know pass protection was an issue for him, that he had to work on in training camp, and with the O line not cohesive and Rodgers being his health being of the essence, does all that combine to limit the amount of touches that or snaps that KJ is going to get in that backfield?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think he deserved more snaps. I do think the Steelers are sending a message there that they don't think he has earned those snaps. And when you fumble on kickoffs, not exactly the way I would recommend getting on the field. If that is your one role and you're fumbling the football in those limited touches, that is not the way to do it. And he's not a great pass catcher. He's not a great route runner, and he's not a great pass pro back. So I understand he's probably going to naturally be the running back 3 in snaps most weeks. But he could deserve more than 2. He can deserve more than 2. If you're trying to be an explosive backfield, you're talking about the most natural wide zone runner on your football team. And so I would really like to see Caleb Johnson, for a few more snaps, a few more runs. Granted, they weren't able to ever get into a rhythm here on the ground game. They kind of had to go to the pass because of they were playing behind. The game script put them in a lot of passing situations. They were really poor on first downs, John. They averaged 3.3 yards per play on first down. It was all second and third down when they put it in the air under Rodgers' arm and in the hands of their playmakers on a wide receiver and tight end, where they were really able to get going on offense. These backs didn't do much, and it's a talented stable of backs. I like the 3 backs they have, but KJ has to be a little more involved to me.
Okay, yeah, good point, and we'll see what bodes against the Seahawks. But the larger issue, the larger theme I see here, and I want your opinion, is they're trying to follow the Eagles model, the Howie Roseman model, build through the trenches on both sides of the ball. But if you look at the production of the running game and and we just spent 10 minutes talking about the O line and its deficiencies, neither is working. I mean, they couldn't stop the run and they couldn't run the ball, and they didn't do a great job protecting Rodgers.
Right. And so that is, that's kind of what I wrote after the game immediately in my post game column is yes, it's a win. And obviously you like the win, but like they set out this offseason to smash the run and run the ball down your throat. And they did neither of those things. They got thoroughly dominated on both sides in the trenches. It's just a reality of life. If you get dominated on both sides in the trenches more often than not, as a football team, you're going to lose football games. It just is natural. The trenches are where games are really won on the margins. And so the Jets won the trenches and still lost. But I mean, I think Jets fans come out of this game feeling like, hey, we got something. Like,
Mhm.
anytime you feel like you have a run game, a team that can stop the run and you can make teams one dimensional, and you as an offense can do whatever you want through the air as a result of that stout run game, you feel like you are cooking with something. The Steelers really were great as a passing offense and like not much else. And that's something to think about there. They cannot be thoroughly dominated in the trenches in the future. And that is a really good trench team in the Jets, but they face other really good trench teams in the playoffs. Like if you want to win playoff games, you gotta stock up against the Ravens and the Bills. Bills look certainly very good in the trenches, at least on the offensive trenches. There are teams that they're going to face that look really good in the trenches. So the Steelers have to be much better in the trenches. They can make the playoffs if even with bad trench play. We saw the Texans do that last year, and then they even won a playoff game. But what they can't necessarily do is make extended playoff runs with bad offensive line and defensive line play, which they both got on Sunday. They need better there from both sides of the football.
A couple of takes on the defensive woes that I'll get your reaction. Tomlin's quote was that the Steelers didn't whoop enough blocks against the Jets. He says there will be some schematic changes to help the guys in the run defense. But what does that really mean? I need you to interpret that Tomlinism.
I mean, listen, they'll make some things, I think, for the linebackers. Thought Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen had bad games just reading and reacting. They look slow. Some of it was obviously the defensive line getting just crushed back. If you watch the tape, there's a few things that stick out. So let's break down the run defense struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Benton, man, is the real story of that game to me in the run defense. This was his worst game as a pro. Like I've watched every Keanu Benton game on tape, and he was thoroughly whooped on multiple plays where he is getting thrown out of the gaps. Go watch the first play of the game. It was a 18-yard run by Breece Hall. And he just gets rocked right out of the A gap, gets thrown two gaps over and thrown straight into Cam Hayward, and they run right there. People were like, oh, Cam Hayward was on the ground. A few times Cam Hayward and Y.A. Black were actually holding the point of attack and ready to disengage, and Ben was thrown into them, and then they got taken out, and then they ran right through there. That is something to think about. Keanu Benton is not a nose tackle. He's not really even a three tech. I mean, he kind of is. He does his best work from a shade. And what I mean by a shade is that he does his best work face up or offside, offset. And what really he is a quick twitch pass rusher that gets upfield. He surprises guys by his quickness, by his power, but he does not sit there, take on double teams, and anchor against them. That's not something he does. And he knows that. So he turns a shoulder and tries to deke it and finesse move it, instead gets thrown out of the club. Like that's what happens. So the Steelers, when we're talking about schematic adjustments, what they need to do is they need to give Keanu Benton the ability to just go upfield and be an upfield player that does his work from a shade, ideally a one tech, a three tech, something of the sort there, and can just go and surprise guys by his quickness. He's kind of similar, he's kind of the interior defensive line version of Nick Herbig, and the Steelers know how to use Nick Herbig. They use him in sub packages, they use him in pass rush situations, but Keanu Benton doesn't get the same kind of gravitas. This is still a good football player. I think he's just grossly miscast by the Steelers. The rest of the defensive line, Cam was okay. I don't think he was catastrophically bad. I thought Y.A. Black played well, honestly. I thought Y.A. was good. So I would like to see him more. I'd like to see him at the nose. I think he would be a perfect nose tackle. When Derek Harmon comes back, I think your starting base package could be Harmon, Black and Cam, and then you use Benton in those passing situations in your sub packages. I think that could be a really useful utilization of those players. Benton feels like to me right now, if he's used in his current role and leaves in 2 seasons, it's going to be a guy that goes to an upfield attacking scheme, and then you're wondering why he is so productive in that scheme, looking back on it when you didn't see that here. I thought the linebackers, as I said, struggled. I thought Queen and Wilson were a little slow to react, or weren't going through their keys well. I thought the secondary looked slow at times in pursuit, but I do think they tackled well for the most part. Slay had a few missed tackles, but I thought Clark and Thornhill and Ramsey did a nice job there. So did Porter. So this run defense really kind of comes down to the backers struggling to read and react because the defensive line got whooped, and then the struggle to disengage and shed blocks up front. That was the other thing that kind of stuck out to me, John. So we'll see how they kind of choose to fix that. But it was definitely an issue that you saw on tape and something that has to be rectified.
What does the addition of Jabril Peppers add to the Steelers' gumbo?
I think Peppers, man, is a fun player. This is the type of player they kind of needed. Um, and when you look at what they needed, and this is even before the Deshaun Elliott injury. I think they need another safety. I've called for that for the past month or so. Peppers can play strong or free. He can come down in the nickel on run downs. He's a pretty fun player in a lot of respects. What he does and what Jabril Peppers can do really well is be that kind of central communication hub on the back end. He's a veteran that's very smart, very football smart. He is a good playmaker. You look over his career, pretty consistent. Still, we'll see at 29. He's coming off a knee injury, but before the knee injury, was a good athlete that could cover space. He's a solid tackler. There's just a lot of steady with Jabril. He's not going to give you super splash. He'll give you kind of steadiness, and I think that's kind of something they needed. They need versatile steadiness, and with the Deshaun out, especially, I think that's needed. We'll see how they deploy this, right? Because they have Chuck Clark and they have Juan Thornhill. I think Thornhill's out there no matter what. What they actually did in game was the opposite of what I would have done. They shifted Thornhill to the box and put Clark at post. I would not play Chuck Clark in the post. He's just not fast enough to do it. Put Peppers back there. If you want to run some three safety, you can and boost your run defense that way. You can essentially make one of those safeties. I think Clark could fit that role, almost a Sam linebacker type if you wanted that. But Peppers has done that before. So if you wanted him down there, as almost a rundown nickel type, and you wanted Ramsey to play some outside, that could happen as well. So there's a lot of things you can do, John, to kind of utilize the safety room. It allows a lot of fun things. And then when Elliott comes back, because this is not a long-term knee injury, he will be back post-bye at the latest. He will be back for that Week 6 game. Maybe he'll be back in Ireland. It's possible. When he comes back, they have a nice just quartet of different kind of skill sets that they can utilize in this room. So I really like the Jalen Ramsey signing. The trade when he brought in the first he brought in, I think Peppers brings a lot of different things that kind of rectify some of the things they still didn't have in the secondary, much like Jalen Ramsey did back in June. So I am a fan of this move.
Here's one of the best takes I've heard on the Steelers' growing collection of veterans from other teams. The Steelers are the island of misfit toys, except the misfits can still play. And of course, we're going to get to see them live and in person Sunday at Acrisure Stadium against the Seahawks. I know this win, this unexpected offensive explosion directed by Rodgers that we saw is going to bring a lot of Steeler fans out, many beers deep and with their popcorn ready, and to see pretty much NFL history of, this Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers donning the black and gold, in Pittsburgh. It is going to be a moment. What can we expect in this game? Do we see him orchestrating another 30-plus point outburst, or how does this game shape up in your mind?
We'll see. I'm skeptical because of the formula they utilized. I liked it, but I'm also a little skeptical it's super sustainable, right? I think they need to have downfield passing. The other thing is I just like this secondary for the Seahawks much more than I did Really, it's kind of, the Jets secondary to me is kind of Sauce Gardner and the guys. There's a lot of questions I have about that secondary. Brandon Stevens, Tony Adams, not my preferred players I would want starting in my secondary. But you look at the Seahawks secondary, and there's a lot of talent here. Devin Witherspoon, great player. Kobe Bryant, Julian Love at safety. It sounds like Nick Eamon-Wari is going to be out with an ankle injury, so they're not going to play as much big nickel. So less three safety stuff, probably more traditional nickel. Maybe you could find a kind of it's something to exploit there. Reek Woolen has been kind of the struggle. If you saw that 49ers game and how it played out, you would know how much Reek Woolen messed up in that game. And if he plays, that's someone I would go after. But they have a backup in Josh Jobe who's really playing well. So he might just play more. So there's things to figure out. Defensively up front, I don't think they're as stout. We'll see if Uchenna Nwosu plays. He's probably their best edge. If he doesn't, significant news for the Steelers in terms of handling pass rush things. This defense, it has some fun things with it, but it's another blitz-heavy defense. I mean, we saw the Steelers kind of notch at the Jets, right, with the screen game and get behind them and able to take advantage of these crossers because they won some one-on-one matchups and they kind of ran some pick plays. I think something similar there. But this, to me, is a game where Roman Wilson can be utilized on those crossers, and we could see one or two big Roman Wilson catches with his speed just running across the football field. I do think on the other side, listen, I'm not a huge fan of some of these guys. I don't think it's a great offensive line for the Seahawks. I think it's, I did not expect the Jets offensive line to push the Steelers around. So, hey, who knows? Maybe it happens again. But this is not an offensive line that I rate super highly. The interior, especially, like you would think guys like Benton and Hayward and Black and others can have good games. And I would even put Highsmith and Watt over the interior at points this game, get them away from Cross and Lucas, who are probably the best parts of that O-line, the two tackles. I do think they have some nice weapons. I do like Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, their backfield. Jackson Smith and then Jigba, I think, is what most people know. He's a dynamic receiver. He's playing more outside and in the slot, but now with Cooper Kupp, he's played more outside. So I'm interested to see how they kind of utilize the corners. If Porter is playing, I guess. Porter has a hammy issue, so we'll see if Joey plays. But if he does, I'm interested to see how they utilize that. I would not want Slay against JSN at all. So whoever is playing outside, if Ramsey is playing in the slot and going against Kupp, fine. But I would have Porter travel with JSN. I would, if that's the case. Keep Ramsey in the slot, utilize his physical nature to kind of neutralize the run game if you want, but keep Slay in advantageous situations, I think, because you saw him match up against Garrett Wilson and just get cooked. Just not a matchup that you should have at this point in his career, and it's fine. I think Slay after that played fine in this game. So we'll see how that goes, but this is not it's not an elite team, right? I don't really think this is a tough game for the Steelers. I think they should win this game. Like, that's what I would say. If they don't win this game, we're going to be talking a lot. So there's some new here. There's new OC. McDonald's in his second year, but still is kind of finding his identity. The Steelers kind of know him because he was the Ravens DC there for a while. He's very blitz heavy, blitz happy. There's some nice players on the Seahawks team that you have to worry about, just like with any team. But it's not a team that if I were the Steelers, I would look at and say, we should lose to them. I think the Steelers, talent-wise, are a better team.
Okay. And well, there you have it, folks, setting up for the home opener against Seattle. I know one thing, I'll be there. And after that tantalizing first course that Aaron Rodgers served up, we are expecting excitement, thrills, chills, and to be entertained for once by this Steelers offense. It's been a while since we could say that about the Steelers offense. So we're hoping for a second serving of that, and that Rodgers has plenty left in the tank to take us somewhere in this 2025 season that just got a whole heck of a lot more exciting and interesting. And we'll see round 2 on Sunday, and we'll be back here Tuesday to talk all about it. So be here next week, and go Steelers, beat the Seahawks.